Welcome back to Football Daily, ladies and gentlemen, where today we're talking about Unai Emery. Before we get going, and if you want to know more about Unai Emery's appointment at Aston Villa and what Aston Villa fans actually think about it, then make sure you go and watch our brand new show, The Talking Point, where we bring you guys at home, the fans, into the studio. Here's a little teaser.
So I bought into the dream straight away. I thought, fairy tale, here we go. He's going to be a Villa for a few years and then take over from Klopp in Liverpool in a few years' time and, you know, sail off into the sunset. But
happy to be a stepping stone club. Shocking stuff.
Okay, so Aston Villa have got maybe, the most exciting appointment at their club since Martin O'Neill, I would suggest. A really high caliber name, but the squad is causing some debate online. Who's good enough and who's not good enough for the Spanish maestro? Well, today we're going to have a cheeky little look. We're going to be bringing you one of the classic stay or go series that we've done with all of the other Premier League clubs. I've got 30 Aston Villa players in front of me, some of which are out on loan, some of which are still at the club. I've got 4 tiers. I've got keep, I've got loan, I've got sell, I've got contract exit. You know how this works. Let's crack straight on. Let's start with the goalkeepers then. Emi Martinez, very blatant keep for me. He's under contract until 2027. I think his post-shot expected goals pretty much dead flat 0 across the division, which is actually really, really good. It's sort of the 7th or 8th best in the Premier League. They've actually had an alright defence so far this season, Aston Villa. I think by expected goals against at least, they are flat 10th in the table. I'm sure Emery will be hoping to improve that. We know he likes to build on solid foundations. But Emi Martinez is fine, isn't he? Let's be realistic. Jed Steer is probably going to be a contract exit. His contract is up in 2023. He is the longest serving player at the club, but at 29 years of age now. He spent last year out on loan at Luton. He had that Achilles problem. I just think it's probably time, and Unai Emery will move him on next summer. Olsen up next, of course, under contract until 2024 after they made that move from Roma, I think it was, on loan permanent. Yeah, I think that's fine, isn't it? Keep as a backup option. Let's not waste too much time on the goalkeepers because we've got 30 names to get through. Right backs are up next, and we've got Matty Cash. They have a bit of a dearth at right back, Aston Villa. Obviously, I'm going to keep the reigning player of the year, Matty Cash, at the club. He's under contract until 2027. Bit of a slow start to the season, but I think you can say that about every Villa player. Next up, we've got Frédéric Guilbert, who was, of course, on loan last year at Strasbourg, who actually had a very good season. He played a large role in it. 33 appearances for Strasbourg as they finished 6th in League 1. He's had a contract in the summer, and I think it will be a contract exit. I'm imagining that Villa would have liked to get a fee for him this summer, but couldn't find a suitor, which is a little bit surprising given how well Strasbourg did last year. Diego Carlos, a very, very obvious keep. He only came in for £27 million in the summer. Obviously tore his Achilles almost straight away against Everton, didn't he? Which is really, really sad. Excited to see him back and playing under Unai Emery, who loves a dog at the back. And Diego Carlos definitely got that dog in him. Next up, we've got Ezri Konsa, who's actually only under contract until 2024. Of course, his pre-season was kind of disrupted a little bit with that knee problem. However, he has played a lot of minutes this season, over 900 of them. He's been one of the most prominent faces in Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa so far this season. He's a definite keep for me. A couple of years ago, I think Ezri Konsa was really progressing very quickly, and he was becoming sort of one of the names in contention for an England spot. At the moment, I don't feel like he's quite there. Maybe taking a little bit of a step back this season, but like I said earlier, a lot of the Aston Villa squad have done. He definitely had a bit of a dip in form last season, but I back a coach like Unai Emery to bring the best out of a player like Ezri Konsa. Next up, we've got Callum Chambers, who's of course worked with Unai Emery before. Of course, he was at Arsenal when Unai Emery arrived. I think he loaned him to Fulham, though, if my memory serves me correctly, when he first came in. I actually don't think I've seen Callum Chambers have a bad game in an Aston Villa shirt. I think he hasn't put a foot wrong. I'm really surprised he hasn't got a little bit more game time under Steven Gerrard, to be honest with you. I think, a player like Jan Bednarak has started over him, I think, at least once this season, which I'm not sure about. So for me, Callum Chambers is definitely going to be a keep. I think he's a really good, solid option. Plays at right back, plays at centre back, and playing defensive midfield. He's fine cover. Next up, one of the big 3 debate points in this Aston Villa squad for me. We've got Tyrone Mings, I think John McGinn, and Philippe Coutinho as the big debate points. And it really splits opinion on Aston Villa Twitter. Of course, he was stripped of the captaincy, wasn't he? He was dropped from the side by Steven Gerrard. That sort of famous quote now about when he looks me in the eyes. kind of came back to bite Gerrard to a level, I would suggest. What happens with Tyrone Mings is very interesting because he's clearly low on confidence. He's making some really high-profile errors, and I don't think being stripped of the captaincy helped with that confidence. He's only under contract until 2024, so a decision really needs to be made about him this coming summer. Can't be allowing it to delay and let him leave on a free. If you're going to let him go, it's either got to be this summer or you've got to give him a new contract. I think I'm going to leave Tyrone Mings to the end and see what my squad shape is looking like, because I'm really torn between keeping him and selling him. Aston Villa fans, let me know what you think in the comments below. Next up, we've got Courtney Howes, who's under contract until 2025. He's had very limited game time over the last 2 Premier League campaigns. I think played about 7 games in each, 14 games overall. I think for the good of his career, it's probably time now to sell him and let him move on because he is 27 years old. Next up, we've got Jan Bednarek, who was kind of bought in more as an emergency loan cover following that Diego Carlos ruptured Achilles, wasn't he? Yeah, I wouldn't be extending it. I think contract exit there. I'm a little bit surprised he's got as many minutes as he has over players like Callum Chambers, to be honest with you. Ashley Young is up next. I can't believe he's still doing it at 37 years of age, and he's actually been really good this season. Like, he's got a legitimate claim and battle between Luca Dean and him for the starting spot of Villa, based purely on merit, according to Aston Villa fans, which I found really, really interesting. I do think it's probably contract exit time. You know, they gave him the 1-year extension in the summer. He is 37 years of age now. I think it's time to look for the future of Aston Villa under Unai Emery. Sadly, I don't think that includes Ashley Young, but he's continued to be a really solid servant for him. Next up, we've got Luca Dean, who, like I said, is battling with Ashley Young for that starting spot. On paper, obviously, us neutrals would say Luca Dean definitely. Aston Villa fans have something to say about that. Just 7 games started this season, putting up the lowest non-penalty expected goals and assists of his career, particularly his expected assists have dropped by about 50% this season. But like I said, Aston Villa players across the board are terribly out of form and have been under Steven Gerrard, so I'm expecting Unai Emery to give him something of a new lease of life. He's definitely going in my keep column. Augustinsson is up next. Just haven't seen enough of him on this loan spell so far to say that I would keep him and make that move permanent, so I'm going to put him in contract next year. Next up then, we've got Douglas Luiz, obviously a man who was wanted by Arsenal in the summer. They chose not to sell him. He signed a new contract. Yeah, he's a really obvious keep, isn't he? Definitely going to be kept, and I expect him to play plenty of minutes under Unai Emery. Next up, we've got another one of the 3 pillars that I wanted to talk about. Mings, McGinn, and of course Coutinho. And McGinn splits opinion. Like, really splits opinion amongst Aston Villa fans. The tweet I put out asking for people's suggestions, McGinn was right down the middle. Some people saying you've got to keep him, others saying you've got to get rid of him, which obviously is a bit of a surprise given that he is the club captain and across the last few seasons he's been vital to the squad, but he's underperforming right now. Danks came in, dropped him straight away, and I think that speaks volumes. Because yes, while he has been given the captaincy by Steven Gerrard, no goals, no assists so far this season. I think it was 7 last season, 8 the season before that. And his general performance has dropped below his old standards. It's especially highlighted when you've got players like Boubacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz who could potentially start in that midfield area as well. What to do about McGinn? I think I'm going to leave McGinn like I did Tyrone Mings until the end and see what the rest of the squad has shaken out like. Next up, we've got Morgan Sanson, who's 28 now, and it just hasn't worked since that £14 million move in 2020. Obviously, he had the bad injury. Hasn't had any opportunities. Let's be real, he just hasn't had a chance at Aston Villa. And I think it's probably time to cut the losses. Contract till 2025. Can you get some small fee out of France? I feel really sorry for him. But yeah, I'm going to put him in sell. We've got Marvellous Nakamba up next. And look, I actually think Unai Emery might like a player like Marvellous Nakamba because he really does follow a tactical layout to the letter. I think even at the start under Gerrard, pre that 110-day injury with his knee, he was actually playing all right. But he's not as good as Boubacar Kamara, and I don't think he's as good as Douglas Luiz, who are both going to want to play in that sort of deep-lying, either deep-line playmaker in the case of Douglas Luiz or sort of break-up man in the case of Boubacar Kamara, and I don't think he's as good as either of them. So yeah, I'm going to say sell. because you can still potentially get a fee for Marvellous Nakamba. Another deep line name that I totally forgot about there as well, Leander Dendoncker. I'm going to keep him. Of course, he was only signed by the club this summer, and he's probably ahead of Nakamba in the pecking order as well. He's also only had one Premier League start since coming to Villa under Gerrard, and that came at the weekend under Danks. And I actually think he was really good against Brentford as well. You know, he got a standing ovation when he was taken off in sort of the 75th minute. So, Dendoncker stays. We've got Ramsey up next. Obviously, I'm going to be keeping him. Really, really strong breakout season last year. Obviously, got his England under-21 debut as well. Was it 6 goals in 34 odd appearances? Not been as good this year. Not been as effective this year. But I'm going to keep rinsing and repeating the phrase. Nobody has. And I'm sure Unai Emery will be hoping to utilise some of the players out of the Aston Villa Academy. The likes of Ramsey. The likes of Cameron Archer, potentially. Let's see. Boubacar Kamara as well. Good news this week for Villa fans. Back early from that injury, which is massive for them. Obviously, he's going in the keep column. Let's not mess about. We got Emi Buendia up next then. The man with a criminal lack of minutes this season. Seriously, a criminal lack of minutes. He's completed 90 minutes once this season. He's definitely being kept. I think he is a match made in heaven. A match made in heaven with Unai Emery's system. I think he works incredibly hard off the ball. Still a massive contributor on the ball. He's the second highest contributor in terms of expected goals and assists in the squad after Ollie Watkins, and he's played like infrequently, and that's being kind. I think it's 500 odd minutes across the course of the season. Got to be used more. Got to be used more effectively. He's brilliant. Philippe Coutinho up next. The third of the major pillars and big talking points for Aston Villa, in my opinion. 30 years old, under contract until 2026. 4 more years to run on this deal that's likely to be above £100,000 per week. You know, this deal looks bleak. It looks a little bit bleak right now. It looks a little bit bleak. In the post-Steven Gerrard world, where does Philippe Coutinho fit into an Unai Emery system? Now, I'm not saying Unai Emery won't utilise him, because I think he will. But if a club came in tomorrow with an offer for Philippe Coutinho, I would sell him. I don't know whether he fits into the future of the side. I would prefer to be utilising a player like Emi Buendia, let's put it that way. Leon Bailey, who's under contract till 2025, is up next. I'm definitely going to be keeping him. Didn't actually play very well last season after that £30 million move. He looked quite unfit. He had a lot of injury problems. He had a huge pre-season, of course, where he went back to Jamaica, and he kind of beasted himself, and he put himself through hell, supposedly. Came back. And, you know, he had an amazing pre-season. And people were talking about him really hitting the ground running. And it's been, again, a little bit stop-start. Against Brentford, he thought he looked much more comfortable. And I do think, again, he'll be utilised a lot by Unai Emery, so he's being kept. Bertrand Traore, who's, of course, on loan in Istanbul. 1 year left on his contract at the end of this year. So I think if you can get any fee for him, sell him. Again, he's just been so unlucky with injuries, hasn't he? Cameron Archer is up next. He's under contract until 2025. He's going to be my first loan. I think Unai Emery might have a look at him, because when he's come on for Villa, he looks so dangerous. I think he might be looked at, but if he's not going to get minutes, you know, in the summer, apparently every championship club in the league inquired about his services and were told no. Well, let's give him some game time then. Either give him some game time or send him out on loan. Keenan Davis, who's got a contract till 2024. Likewise, a little bit like Cameron Archer. You know, he had a really strong second half of the campaign on loan at Nottingham Forest, where I think he got 5 and 15 and helped them get promoted. Started the season brilliantly at Watford. I think he's got 4 goals in 6 starts down there. I think you might be able to cash in on Keenan Davis at championship level. I really do. I think it's pointless having another loan there. Don't think he's going to be playing over Ings or over Watkins, and Cameron Archer's there too. So I think you might be able to get a bit of a fee. Ings is up next, and I saw a shocking stat that at the weekend against Brentford, it was the first time that him, Buendia and Bailey, who have all of course signed in that summer post Grealish, have started a game together in the Premier League. What is that? That's criminal that that's been allowed to happen. I think it was 7 goals, 6 assists last season. Pretty underwhelming by his own high standards. Definite keep for me. I think he's the elite finisher in the squad. And given the way I've seen Unai Emery set up that Villarreal side, it wouldn't be a huge surprise to me to see him use Ings and Watkins as a front 2 in a sort of 4-4-2 with Buendia and Bailey on the flanks. That wouldn't surprise me. So I'm definitely going to be keeping Danny Ings. Ollie Watkins, of course, he's being kept as well. Works incredibly hard. The highest non-penalty expected goals and assists in the squad. He's about 0.6 per 90 this season, which is still really, really impressive. His numbers across his Aston Villa career have been great, man. 14 goals, 5 assists in his first season. 11 goals, 2 assists last season. I think 2 goals, 2 assists this season. If he can get double figures yet again, it's another very solid campaign for Ollie Watkins. And I think he's likely to. Wesley's up next, £22 million he was signed for, and I just feel so sorry for him because never recovered from that injury, did he? I think it's time to sell him. The loan moves haven't worked. He didn't score a goal at Bruges, I don't think. He didn't score a goal at Internacional. I don't think he hasn't scored one so far at Levante. I feel really sorry for him, man. The injury's just a disaster. Okay, so that leaves Mings and McGinn, the two big names and big personalities in this squad, given one was the captain last season, stripped the captaincy this season, given to John McGinn. And, you know, I think if good offers came in for either of these players, I would really be considering them. But I'm looking here at the Aston Villa depth chart of the squad that I've got remaining. And it is quite thin without McGinn and Mings. You know, you'd only have 3 centre-backs, Diego Carlos, of which is coming off the back of a major injury. In midfield, you potentially be one short as well, especially if Douglas Luiz left in the summer. You would then only have 3 central midfielders. What you would say, though, is if you got a £30, £40 million bid for either of these players, you might be able to reinvest it in a higher quality option. So I think for now, I'm going to say keep both of them. But if an offer came in, I'll be perfectly willing to sell. The depth is a little bit of an issue off the back of my sort of quite brutal keep and selling. Aston Villa fans, I want to hear from you guys at home though. Let's put this list up on screen one more time. Have I got any right? Have I got any wrong? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'm looking forward to watching Unai Emery's Villa.